Hello everyone, this is a quick example of a join. So before we do anything with SQL, we need to understand what we are doing and why. Suppose I'm a manager and I'm curious about this invoice ID number 1. I can see vendor ID, I can see information pertaining to this invoice. And I'm curious, what is the vendor name actually? Because over here I can only see vendor ID. And hence I can look into the vendors table. Here it is, this is vendors table. And I can scroll all the way down to vendor ID 122, the same one, and figure out that the vendor is actually United Parcel Service. That's what I wanted. And that way I can do it, I can answer my question. Now SQL, of course, has a way for us to retrieve the information that we need, for example, invoice ID and vendor name and invoice total together. And that is what the joins are for. Obviously, I need to retrieve data from two different tables in the same database. So the identification of the relevant rows goes by vendor ID. Basically, vendor ID over here, 122, is the same as vendor ID over here. So which vendor actually generated this invoice is United Parcel Service. So let me do a join that will identify, in particular, these two rows and many other rows by the same vendor ID. So I'm going to do a select statement. With these three columns. We select these three columns from invoices, join, this is the join keyword, vendors. And at this point I'd like to spend a moment just commenting out those initial queries. We no longer need them. And the main part is to identify. So joining without identifying usually makes no sense. And whenever you are doing a join or any other data retrieval, you want to make sure that what you're doing actually makes sense. So use your business understanding of what this database came from, how was it organized, and what kind of business needs it. So I need to join on invoices dot vendor ID and vendors. So basically right now I'm explaining to the SQL that I want that these two tables are identifying by the vendor ID column. Vendor ID column in one of them has the same value, corresponding values to vendor ID in the other one. In other words, we know that if the vendor ID is the same, then the records correspond to the same vendor. And just for convenience, because originally I wanted invoice ID number 1, I will make sure that it is actually ordered by invoice ID. All right, let's run. So invoice ID number 1, United Parcel Service as expected, and here is our invoice total.